Okay, it is 6:30 p.m. and welcome to J280, Critical Issues in Criminal Justice. Today, I'm going to conduct what we call an open house, and during this open house, I will give you an opportunity to be able to learn about my expectations for the next 11 weeks. So we're going to make sure that you get this information. Okay, so I'm going to start out by sharing my screen, diving right in. Okay, and you can see my name, Richard Wright, my phone number, and you can see that little note, which is very important for you guys to pay attention to and to notice. Let me see, make sure I'm recording. Yes, I am. Okay, let's go back. And the note says students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. And I mean what I say in there. I've had students to reach out to me already. If you do text me, make sure you indicate your name, because all I'll see is your phone number, and make sure that you indicate to me which class that you're in as well. And then a lot of times I will call you. Sometimes you'll text me from work, but sometimes there are questions that you ask that the best way to resolve it is with a direct phone conversation rather than texting or email. But feel free to text me, call me, email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. And you figure that one out. If you know how many hours there are in a day, you already know what that really means. Okay, so now let me go over some of the requirements. You're going to notice this course homepage contains a lot of good information for you. It's the first thing that you see when you open up your class. I remind you that you're requested to conduct research for all papers. And there's no textbook in this class, so it's not really a big deal. But if there was, then you would lose points for research, but there is no text in this course. All written assignments, though, should be in APA format. That means citations in the body of the paper, and, I stress the word and, references at the end. I provide information on this homepage to help you with APA, including a video that if you clicked on it, when we get to it, I'll show you where it is. You will lose 1 point if you don't provide a cover sheet that goes right with the APA requirements. Okay, so get that straight up front. Make sure you understand that. And then here are some details that relate to peer mentor versus tutoring. You can check on this for your own. Student success guide, which tells you how to be successful. The key is basically to do your assignments, follow the instructions, and get them in on time. That's pretty much it. But there's some habits that you can develop. There's some library answers. Our library and learning resources team have put together a myriad of resources that you can find and utilize in your research. I will tell you this, that when you use your citations and references, never use Wikipedia. Never use Wikipedia. If you do, you're going to lose points right off the bat. And that's all. I'm going to say that now. I'm not going to say it throughout the quarter. But if you lose points and you'll say, well, I didn't know, that's why this open house is here today for you. Then there's a writing guide to help you as well with your writing. And then this is the Library and Learning Center resources where you can go and find adequate, really good resources for your written assignments. Then there's something about tutor assistance. I do recommend tutoring to students even if you're not having problems. Sometimes it helps you to get sharper. Then I have some great articles that if you download them and print them, that talks about how to go beyond the textbook, analytical tips for criminal justice. We get to the point we started talking about critical thinking. Many of you have had a course in critical thinking, but critical thinking is so important. It is also one of the transferable skills, my favorite one, that I will be sharing in a little bit when we get to the syllabus. The importance of information literacy, so important. You have to be able to know how to find information and details. It is so critical in this day and time that you be adept at knowing how to find information that you need to support positions or to determine what positions you can take in terms of completing your work in school and out of school. Referencing, again, this deals with APA as well. Annotated bibliography, you don't really deal with that in this class, but it is used in some of the classes. And then there's a critical thinking video. And if you were to copy and paste this link and put it on your browser, it will lead you to the video, and you take time to look at that. And then we get down to the all-important rubrics. I always encourage students that I did send you the rubrics, but I also encourage students to make sure that they line the rubrics up with their written assignments. For example, this week, it explains the components of criminal justice, significant events, and then grammar, APA, organization, and required page count. Now, if you don't get the right amount of pages, you're going to lose points for that as well. So you want to make sure you do that. But this is your rubric. This is how I grade. You want to maximize by getting 30 points. And each week, there's a different one, okay? Then there's some field work. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So the whole thing is right here. But I also sent it to you as you go along. Be aware that our live lectures will take place 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time beginning today. And today is an open house. So some of the things I'm going over today, I won't go over again. Week 1, which is now, the next lecture will be week 3, week 6, week 8, week 10. And then you must attend the live lectures or listen to the archive. Each week, I'll give you a key word at the end. You'll be required to provide that key word if you don't attend the live lecture. Well, even if you attend, you still need to give the key word so that I'll know that you paid attention during the lecture. So there have been students, and I know it's not any of you, who would log in and then they would go do something else. So they're really not, they're attending it, but they're not there. It's like coming to class and signing in and then sneaking out the back door. So I keep record of attendance, and you want to get those points. By the way, this is an assignment. And since it's an assignment, it's due along with the scheduled assignments that are due. As you know, your written assignments are due every Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. That holds for also logging in and letting me know that you discovered the key word. Also, it is very important that you listen very carefully and save the lectures. There will be recordings under this section here, and I will provide that for you. And at the end of every lecture, you'll be able to get it there as well. Okay. So now I have some information. Inbox grading, it's not a big deal anymore, but you can take time to look at it. But your APA assistance, there's a guide in here. And if you click on this link, it will open up that guide to help you. Some students say they don't understand APA. Our people have worked diligently to simplify APA so that you have no problems getting it. And then there are tutors who are trained to help you in APA if you run into a problem. It's not very, very, very difficult. You just have to follow the steps and the procedures. So you could click on this link, and then you can see all the information that you need to see concerning that. Okay? So now let's move on down to our announcement section, but I want to start with the welcome announcement, which each of you received, telling you who I am, telling you certain things that you need to do. And you need to make sure that you do these things on a regular basis. I will say to you, check your course calendar. Your course calendar is very important, and I would print it out if I were you. It's for the whole quarter, and it tells you, like a student says, when is something due, or I don't understand something. I give details in the course calendar as well. You just have to put your mouse over it, and you'll see. You can post any questions that you have that you want other students to see in the general course questions forum, and anybody can answer them. I answer them, students answer them. And then there's resources tab, which you can find valuable information. That resources tab is actually right here at the top. There it is, all the way in the corner. So resources, then you have your calendar as well. Okay, so you can get that information. So your resources tab, and then your report tab on the left side is how you access your grade book. And then again, I remind you about APA, tutoring, and how you can get assistance. And then to remind you about our lecture schedule, and to let you know that beginning April 4th, we'll discuss the week's assignments and use PowerPoint, or sometimes we'll use videos, sometimes we won't. But we'll go over the material in the module, and this is the link to the website that you get to be right with us right now. And so that's an important one. You'll see that the whole quarter pretty much, so you'll be able to have access to that announcement. Then each week, I will post an announcement, and it tells you about the module, and it explains to prepare, to read the module, and the grading rubric. I say that over and over and over. And then tell you about the lecture, which is taking place right now, and then it gives also the link right there. And then to remind you to participate in a discussion assignment, which was due yesterday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, the initial post, the relationship between the three components. And then you should be aware that that was due 11:59 p.m. Central Standard last night, and that the reply post is due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then complete the written assignment then versus now. And I told you all written assignments are due every Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, and then the requirements are under the Blackboard Lessons tab, and you'll be able to see all that information. And then I'm going to discuss the fieldwork component, which is your project that you'll have for the quarter. Okay, we're going to discuss that before we finish up today. And then this is a reminder about the open house that says it lasts about an hour and a half, and it may, but I usually try to keep it within an hour. But the first one is usually a little longer because I'm giving a lot of specific details rather than just going over the assignments themselves. And then I remind you to start strong and finish strong. And my motto is, and you'll see this every week, adversity is a springboard to success. I will explain to you what that means to me and give you an understanding that I understand adversity. I understand how to make it through adversity and not let it stop me. Okay? So now let's take a look at the course calendar. So I can go up here. That's one of the places. And this one is, okay, they always have them what I have checked. So I'm going to uncheck this one for now. And this is it. So now it'll populate. Here we go. So the course calendar, as you can see, it tells you about the fieldwork component. It tells you your initial post that was due last night. And then it gives the full title. And then it tells you about the open house, which is taking place right now. And then the reply post. Then it tells you about your written assignment. Now, your written assignment, there are details. And it tells you APA as a reminder, in-text references, as well as a reference, in-text citations, which is the same thing, and then references, minimum of 3 pages, not including the reference page. And so the rubric relates to the grading, and I already showed you that, okay? So that's the calendar. So now let's go back and let's go to the syllabus. Here we go. Now, in terms of the syllabus, it tells you the title of the course, tells you my name, my phone number, gives an email address, and it repeats what I told you on the course homepage as well as notes. So you have no excuse not to know. And then it tells you the requirements of the course, the things you're supposed to do, the discussion posts, as I already told you when they're due. The content of your post should be detailed and thoughtful, not just very brief or, yes, I agree, or I like your post. That's not sufficient. And usually I will take points off, and you will lose 1 point for each day that it is late. Okay? And then your reply posts, you don't have to wait till Saturday. You can reply to as many posts as you want. I encourage more. You'll get credit for a minimum of the 1, but when you reply to more than 1, it makes the discussion forum go smoother, and it also develops a connection between you and your classmates, and that's something that I encourage with each of my students to make sure, try to connect. You notice you'll do that at the beginning of the quarter in the student lounge. Well, this gives you a chance to connect on the various issues of the discussion forum each week when you reply to each other's posts. And I have students that have done very well in terms of doing that. And so I make sure I grade them. But remember the schedule I told you of when they are due. Okay? Again, I already talked about APA. That's the style that we use. And I told you where you can find it. And again, this reminds you, discussion posts, Tuesday, it says midnight or 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that goes for every week. And then reply post Saturday until we get to week 11. We'll get there. You'll see that. Or if you look at the calendar, you'll see that as well. Written assignments, Sunday night, as I already told you, and then the last day of class, okay? And then, of course, quarter start, July, October, January, and April. So we're in April, starting now our quarter as of the 2nd. And then these are the requirements: your discussions, your written assignments, your field work, a minimum of 10 hours of field work experience. These hours are to be completed with an approved agency of your choice. And I will let you know if you have a problem with the agency. And I do encourage you, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, so I'm just going to keep going. Field program assessment, this is at the end. This will be something that you get a grade for. That'll be in week 11. Not to confuse you with the ACAT, which we'll get into later. And then, of course, your live lectures, we've already talked about that as well. And then also, this is a reminder of the thing that you saw at the top of the page regarding the requirements. Now, optimally, 625 points is perfect. You receive 110 points. So that means that you receive 20 points, no, it's 10 points each week for your discussion. And so as a result, you get 5 points for your initial post, 5 points for your applied post. 17.6% of your grade with that. Your written assignments are 300 points. That is almost half, or 48%. So it's very important that you perform well. And then your field work is 14.4% or 90 points. Somebody might say, "Oh, I can lose those." If you do, it could be a difference in an A, a B, or a C. Your program assessment is 100 points and constitutes 16%. And then your live constitutes 4%. But remember, your live lectures help you with these other things up here. So a total of 625 points. Now, here's our grade scale. My goal is to get all of my students up here, or at the minimum here, which is A to B minus. I encourage you to shoot for A, but B, both of those will get you on either the Dean's List or the honor roll. Now, let me say this to you. Do not, I repeat, do not call me, text me, email me, or anything, any source, to say, "Professor Wright, can you tell me what I need to do to get a C in your course?" I will not answer that question. I refuse to answer it because of the fact that I don't teach students how to be average. I teach you how to be A students. And that's my goal. And that's how I teach. That's the level that I teach at. And actually, you should appreciate that because it gives you a chance to maximize your investment. You're spending good money to go to school, and you're planning on a bright future. Those at the higher grades are on the path to success. Those are the lower grades. They are not going to be faring as well successfully. For example, I went through college. I worked. I raised kids, which you'll hear me talk about a little bit more later. But I stayed on the Dean's List. I got a few C's along the way, but I made sure that I got A's and B's in most of my courses. But the point of the matter is that my average when I graduated from college was above a 3.5. So that meant that I didn't get all A's, but I was pretty high up there and graduated with honors. And I was able to get into Northwestern University School of Law in law school. So anyway, the point of the matter is develop that habit, and that's how I operate. There are some students who says, "I want to be a C student." Don't ask me about that. I won't even talk to you. Okay? I mean, I'll help you in class, but my goal is not to help you get that. So now let's move on down. These are the things that I do. I'm supposed to respond to messages within 48 hours. I don't do that. What do you mean you don't do that? I do it in less than that. There are times when 5 minutes after you sent something, I get it. I check my emails. I check my classes in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night. And oftentimes I'm up a little late at night, and I will check, and when I finish doing whatever I'm doing that night, whether it's grading or reading a module, checking out some material in the library, looking at the textbook, I will then see if there are any messages that came in late at night, and I will answer them. Okay? Now, let's talk about transferable skills. Now, we've identified at this school what employers want, the kind of people that employers want, and we embed them in the assignments where you get a chance to utilize these, and you'll see that along the way during the next 11 weeks. Your field report, your written assignments, and all these different things. So let's start out with communication. Communication is critical. You need to be a good communicator. That's in any area, but especially in criminal justice. And you have to be able to do written and oral communication. I said written and oral communication. And you have to be good at those things. Written communication, you are going to write reports, whether you go in law enforcement. Of course, those reports oftentimes end up as exhibits in court. I've used many police reports that were sloppily written to discredit or to embarrass police officers on the stand and their credibility with the trier of fact, whether it's the judge or the jury, but particularly the jury. They look at them like, oh, they really don't know what they're doing. So I don't believe anything that they say, no matter what they did. The point of the matter is you got to be a good communicator. If you're in corrections, you're going to write reports. If you're going to be in parole and probation, you're going to write reports. All along the way, you're going to write reports in any area. And don't even get me started on if you're a lawyer. I'm a professional communicator because of that. Critical thinking, I've already shared that. It is essential. I will be looking at that very seriously, and you'll see my comments throughout the quarter focusing you on the need for more critical thinking. I always run your papers through Grammarly. Each of you have a Grammarly account, and I encourage you before you submit your papers to run each and every paper through Grammarly. I'm not talking about discussion posts. I'm talking about your written assignments. And make sure that you check the box in Grammarly that allows you to check for plagiarism. Some people think that plagiarism is just giving information and don't giving credit for it. Well, our use of plagiarism through Grammarly is to encourage critical thinking. In other words, if we see that you use too much of a source that you discovered during your research and you don't balance that out by your analysis and application of that to the facts and your words, not somebody else's words, then there'll be a lack of critical thinking. And if you get a hit, I usually go over 25%, but the actual reasonable level should be 10 to 15%, then you will lose a percentage right off the bat. So if your grade would be 100 and you have 50% on critical thinking, your grade is going to be 50. It'll be reduced by that plagiarism that I discovered from my Grammarly check. But a lot of students said, well, how did you do that? I used my own words. I said, well, you might have thrown some in there or you might have changed some of the words around. But the essence of it is your ideas is what we're looking for. Your ability to be able to analyze and be creative in your written assignments. Digital fluency. Everything's digital now. Our books, you use all kinds of things. You use Excel spreadsheets, you use PowerPoint, you use Word, you use email, and you use all kinds of Facebook, all these different systems. Everything is digital. When I came up and graduated from law school in 1978, there was no such thing, but I am fluent when it comes to digital. How did I do it? A man of my age, I'll be 68 on May 3rd, is because I said, I see the way things are now, I'm going to have to learn how to do that. I remember when I first came to the college, 2011, I taught residentially. And then finally, in about, I believe it was 2013, they decided that they would move towards online. Well, I was in business law when I first came, but I let them know that that wasn't my big area and that criminal justice. So when I got in that and they said that the criminal justice program was going online, I had to get up to step and get up to speed, and that's what I do. And that's why I'm successful in the things that I achieve. But you got to know that that's what employers are looking for. Diversity. You're going to work with people from all walks of life, all cultures, all races, sexes, religion, nationalities, sexual preferences, and you need to respect them. You need to learn how to do that as a professional in law enforcement, especially because of the fact that you're going to interact with people of different races, African Americans and Caucasians. In terms of law enforcement, you're going to have a big issue there unless you respect and understand, not understand necessarily, but learn from the differences each other have. Here's my spin on it, is that I think that everybody is entitled to good treatment regardless of how bad they are, and I also believe that I should respect every individual regardless of their background. The only people that I don't respect are people that if I cut them, their blood's not going to show red. And so far as I've been able to see, the blood shows red. I know that it changes when it hits the air and oxygen, that it's really blue. I know that. It's been brought to my attention by some of my health sciences people, the nursing and other medical assistants. But my point is that I respect people of different skin colors, different languages, different cultures. And that's what you have to learn to do. And then teamwork, because you're going to work with individuals in teams. You begin to start that in school. But we want to make sure that you understand that as a professional, you're going to work with people. As a lawyer, I worked with prosecutors. I worked with judges. I worked with forensic people. I worked with medical people, medical examiners. I dealt with probation officers, parole officers, and law enforcement officers. All kinds of people were part of the team that I was on. Experts from various fields, linguists, people who were specialized in a certain language. You're going to learn to do that. And then, of course, these next two tie together: ethics and professional responsibility. I encourage students from three perspectives to be ethical at all times. There's a lot of this issue about code of silence and this rule of law enforcement protecting each other. Don't get caught into that, because that could land you in trouble. There have been several instances already reported where there was unethical practice. The reports didn't match what really happened, because then now the videos are released and the videos contradict what you wrote in your report. In other words, you got together with your colleagues. No. Don't find yourself in that position, because you could find yourself losing your job, your pensions, and possibly even your freedom by going to jail. And there's nothing worse than a law enforcement person who goes to jail and they'll run into people that they had sent there previously, or other people that they know who know that they were a police officer. The bottom line is ethics at all times. I always have three things I want my students to remember: ethically, professionally, and to be educational in every field that you operate in. And if you follow the rules of the responsibility of your organization in an ethical fashion, you'll end up okay. And we're teaching you that here. We start out with the with the academic integrity here. We tell you what you should not do, and we try to make sure that you are honest. That's why when you take these tests, they're timed so that you don't have enough time to have your material sitting on the desk. You don't have a cheat sheet, and you shouldn't have a cheat sheet. You couldn't do it when you're in the classroom, so you figure, well, no one's seeing me. Well, I don't even go into my other job, which is pastor, what I would tell you about that. But anyway, my point being is this. Inevitably, I guarantee you, you will get caught. I guarantee you, I haven't seen anybody. There's no such thing as a smart criminal, because the definition of a criminal is one who's been caught committing a crime. So that means they got caught. Cheaters cheat, winners win. Losers lose. So what do you want to do? You want to be a loser, a cheater, or you want to be a winner? And so that's my whole point in a nutshell, and we emphasize that very critically. Then information literacy, I already kind of talked about that, so you want to be able to find things. And then, as I said, you'll have a chance to demonstrate them throughout this course. And then this is the academic integrity policy. You can read that on your own, and it explains things that we, now students said to me that the plagiarism in Grammarly is not the same as this. I agree with them. But the point of the matter is that what it does do, it demonstrates that you are copying and pasting too much, that you are taking resources, but we don't want copy and pasters. We don't want that. We want people who can apply their own knowledge from up here and be able to apply that in what they do. And that's what employers are looking for, and that's what I, as a professor, and most professors are looking for. Okay, so with that being said, let's go and take a look at our week 1. Each week, again, here are the assignments, repeating what I told you already, and it tells you how many pages, and then it lines up with the rubric. So you want to make sure that you follow this, all of these points, okay? I'm not going to go over them. Your discussion posts, I already discussed that. And then your live lecture, again, I told you already, you will obtain points for attending the live lecture this week. So now let's go back and let's look at what the module says in the lesson content. Now, that's when we're going to spend some time talking about what this is all about. This week, dealing with the 3 components of the criminal justice system. Again, it gives your written assignment and so forth. So your field work is what I want to start out and talking about. So this is an assignment that you're going to have to complete. Now, this is what we call a capstone course, which means you're going to take the things that you've learned previously and, as I said, a minimum of 10 hours. This is kind of like a work study, but because you don't get paid, this is like an internship, or it's more like an on-the-job situation. Now, let me say this to you. Your field work can help you to learn more about how whatever it is that you want to do, and I encourage students, try to pick something that they want to do. If you want to go in corrections, don't pick law enforcement because you have an uncle or a cousin or somebody. No, tie it to where you want to go. And so it's a minimum of 10 hours. Now, that's not a lot. That is not a lot of being in the field. And it has to be an approved agency. Let me know what that agency is. And it's going to be completed in your final report. Throughout the quarter, you will have weeks when I will look for your status to see how much you've done. Some people can do their 10 hours in one day with a ride along or some other way, but it's up to you. But the fieldwork experience is very important, and as I said, you already have an opportunity to work with a professional. And as I have said many times, that I learned systems in the classroom, but I learned how things really worked. Like, for example, I learned about law school, but before I went to law school, I had already gone through steps and worked with lawyers several years before I got there, actually 7 years before I got to law school. I had worked with lawyers in different capacities, and so I was ready and understood how it really worked. So it says here an important aspect of your education is to be able to see what you've learned and apply it to the real world, or how it works. And no amount of lecture, book work, or discussion makes up for firsthand experience or direct observation. I learned so much as a trial lawyer from listening to trial lawyers, but also watching them in action, going to sit in the courtrooms and listening to them in the area that I was interested in, which was criminal law. And so that's what this gives you an opportunity to do. And so it also gives you a chance to connect, form professional connections. And trust me, they're invaluable when it comes to looking for jobs. So that's what we're going to be dealing with. So now let's go through the steps here. Step 1 is to research and identify a local criminal justice agency. Notice I said local. Why did we say local? Because it's someplace where you can go. And some possibilities I list here, or they listed who put this together: a police department, completing a ride along, or a series of interviews, or shadowing a professional through the 10-hour observation, working with a halfway house to observe caseworkers managing released offenders, a court proceeding to examine how it works as well. You can also work with a probation officer, a parole officer, or a correction officer. And so so you get to the point that sometimes you run into problems, but especially with the corrections and dealing with the jails and things. But if you can't identify an agency, let me know immediately. And, you know, I've had students in the past, they don't get on this right away. It is important for you to do it. There's at least one student who has asked me about a place where they work. I said, sure. If you work in a jail or a prison or something like that and you can do that, sure, you can do that as well. But remember, it's not you, it's someone else, maybe a warden or a superior or someone along those lines. So that once you've just identified the agency, you need to contact that agency by letter or phone. And this is to introduce yourself and let them know that you're a student, and that if you are doing so, do it in a professional fashion. Write a letter or email. Reach out to them. Don't just show up. You're encouraged to schedule your ride-along interviews between the 4th and 7th module. You are not, as I said, to just show up and request a ride along. It doesn't, or an interview. No, be professional about how you're doing it. Okay? The third step, at least one module before your meeting, mail or deliver a professional letter to the agency contact person that confirms the date of your ride along or interview or whatever it is you're doing with that individual. It is so important because there are people who have run into problems because they didn't do this. The fourth step, doing your ride along, agency visit or interview, pay close attention to what is happening. Ask questions. Listen and observe. Take notes as you go. Remember, while conducting this, dress to impress. Dress with shirts with collars, dress slacks, no jeans. This is not a casual thing. And dress shoes. No open-toed shoes, sandals, or nothing. So you're representing the college in the program, and you would go like as if you were going for an interview. So you ask yourself, how would you do that? The fifth step, in a 2 to 3 page report, documenting what you observed while conducting field work. As a conclusion of the report, write a 1 to 2 page paragraph describing how your education prepared you for this. Be sure to include a cover page. Notice this whole time you're preparing for a 2 to 3 page report at a minimum. It's not like you got to do a 10, 15 page report. Make sure your name, the agency, the dates and times of your field work. I want to know that in the paper. The name of the person you observe, the contact information, and the person you observe. I always recommend to people too also that they include information like citations for the agency. Maybe you looked at their website and things of that nature. Maybe you ran across an article that they wrote or something, or an agency that pertain an article or some written about your organization. You are strongly encouraged, pay attention to this last part, to schedule your field work as soon as possible. Did you hear me say ASAP? As soon as possible. Try to make take your field visit between modules 4 and 7 to allow you enough time to gather information and prepare your report by the due date. So you'll be asked to give me an update in the 5th week. So don't wait too long to get started. And then your final report will be due in week 9. And that's the field report. And that's the project that you're going to have to deal with. And I've gone over it in as much detail as I can. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to come to me. If you have a question, I had a student that says, oh, the agency that I halfway house doesn't allow me to observe. Well, then you need to do something else. And don't wait till the last minute. I had a student who waited till week 10 to say, I haven't had a chance to do any of that because I work and so forth. You need to, along those 11 weeks, work out a day where you can take off and go, and don't call in sick to lie, but do what you need to do. Set it up. Be professional, okay? And that's that. And that's what we got then for this week, okay? So I am going to now go into explaining to you for the next few minutes why I say adversity is a springboard to success. When I was 7 years old, my dad was murdered in front of my face. And at home, it wasn't out. Turned out to be a guy who lived in the house that they had rented a room to, and my mom and him had gotten kind of close and were having an affair, and my dad confronted him, and the man took out a knife and stabbed him in front of a 7-year-old boy, who was me, and 5 younger girls in the room. And because of the fact I have a photographic memory, I'll never forget what I saw that day. The man ended up leaving the room and running out. The police arrested him. However, the case was dismissed or nolli prost because they didn't have adequate evidence. I found out years later that there was a witness that said that my dad was the aggressor, which was not true, but that because he was one pinned down, and the man he was in the corner sitting. That's where they found him. So it didn't make sense. But anyway, the point of the matter is this: is that it was my mother, and so this guy continued to live with us after that. And then for the next from 57 to 62, my mother was beaten by this guy, and so basically I was raised in a home of domestic violence. The police came there frequently, and I mean, she was brutally beaten. She was beaten so bad sometimes that her face was disfigured. There was a movie out called What's Love Got to Do with It? Ike and Tina Turner story. If you ever look at that, I couldn't watch it for many years because it was what I really lived. I actually saw my mother being beaten by this man and tried to stop, but I was too small. Anyway, the point of the matter is I used to have to rub witch hazel on my mom and her wounds, and he would go to jail, be arrested, and when he got released, guess who was there to pick him up? My mother, bringing him back home. And this went on for that period of time. Then finally we moved from the west side of Chicago in 62, to a home. We were living in a home, that apartment building that was owned by my mother and father before that. But anyway, we moved to a single-family home in Gary, Indiana, in a nice area called Terrytown in Gary. And it was really nice. They had Little League. They had all kinds of, it was really nice, really nice. The gangs on the west side had gotten real bad, the Vice Lords and the Cobras. In fact, those gangs agreed that because they knew that I was the only boy, and they also were aware of what happened to my dad, they made an agreement not to recruit me for either gang, and to let me know that when something was going down, they would say, "Shorty, get away from here. You're not in this." And I was basically being protected by two gangs, and that's highly unusual. So anyway, nevertheless, my mom decided she wanted to move from the area, and we moved to Gary in a nice community. And so we moved there in 1963, and I started school in Gary. My sisters did too, and my mother had a seventh girl. So then I had 7 sisters, and I was the only boy and the oldest. Well, Memorial Day of 1963, my mom, who had a restaurant in downtown Gary, she went to a barbecue restaurant. She went there and told me to take care of the kids, and I did. And I got up late, and there was smoke in the house. And then I looked out. It was actually early the next morning, and there was smoke throughout the house. And I opened the window, opened the door to let the smoke out. Well, I saw the car pull off that we owned, and I went and checked my mom's room. She hadn't been there to sleep, but that wasn't unusual because that happened a lot of times. So I had things under control, and so the day went on, and everybody got up, and then 2 gentlemen came to the door, and they announced themselves as police officers, and they broke the news to us, to me, as I was the oldest. They said, your mom was found dead in Chicago. And I started screaming and hollering at the top of my lungs the man's name, Webster Scott, Webster Scott. I said, Scott, Scott, Scott. And so the police said, wait a minute, we have details that they apprehended the person. The person turned himself in, and it was him. He turned himself in. And so anyway, we would be brought back from Gary to stay with an aunt in the south side of Chicago, an area called Chatham. And my aunt, who was my mother's sister, didn't want us there. And we stayed there for a whole year. In fact, that's where I was living when John F. Kennedy, November 22nd, 63, was killed. So anyway, my mom, um, it was really a tough time, tough thing. I remember going to my mom's wake at 13 years old and seeing her in that casket, and I lost it. I wasn't able to go to the funeral, which was the next day. They had to have someone stay with me. I just couldn't do it. I was just that sick. It was bad. So I went on through that year, and then another aunt came and took us and had a house built in the far south side, an area called Maple Park, which is in the Morgan Park area of Chicago, south side, further south. And we, my 7 sisters, and I moved in with my aunt and her husband. I would find out that her husband was not a very desirable person. He and I did not get along. The initial issue was he wanted me to take his last name, and I didn't want to take his last name because I was the only one who could carry on the name of my dad. So we had differences, and then we had some other problems that came up later concerning how my sisters were treated by this man. And I'm just going to leave that open to your thinking. But he abused them. But anyway, the point of the matter is that I had some major problems. And so I found out, by the way, backtracking to when my mom was killed, my baby sister was still being breastfed by her, and had developed even as an adult a security blanket. And then probably one of the toughest things I had to do was in 1994, I had to eulogize her because she got messed up with drugs, and so it was tough. So anyway, back to us living in this house in the Morgan Park, in the Maple Park area in '64. I would find out that the man pled guilty and that he was going to receive 10 years. And then I would discover that with the system, from people, that 10 meant 5. And that for good behavior, that he would serve 3.5 years, potentially. And that's exactly what happened. So I was extremely troubled. I asked people time and time again, what this is not right. Well, someone finally told me that's just the way the legal system works. I said, tell me about that. They say lawyers. So I went to school and asked the librarian at the grammar school I was going to, did we have any books on lawyers? And she said, yes, here's one book. And I took that book, checked it out, and read that book cover to cover. And the next day, anybody I met, I introduced myself as Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer. And so, as it went from there, I ended up graduating from high school. My first job that I got was in this big law firm. It was a corporate law firm, and I took the job as a messenger. And when I got there, I met the lawyers, and I told them that I was Richard Wright and that I'm going to be a lawyer. At the same time, I enrolled in night school at a junior college. It was called Loop College, City College of Chicago, and now it's known as Harold Washington. And I registered for a full load, 3 to 4 classes. And I got married right away, which was not the ideal thing to do. And then after that, there came 2 kids. Well, anyway, the point of the matter is that I found myself in a situation where I was working 40 hours a week and going to classes 12 to 15 hours a week on the bus, carrying books, and they were big books, and I had a document carrier that the lawyers gave me to carry my books in, and I would carry, and I actually had two, and I would carry these books and my papers and stuff I needed, and I would study on the train. Not like the Metro. It was the L train or subway, the way it was if you're familiar with New York. Anyway, a lot of activities going on around me, but I studied on those trains. So I would have to be at work in the morning at 8:30 and ride two. Let's see, I would take two buses and then one L train to get to downtown Chicago. And I would read going and then read coming. When I got off of work, it was 4 o'clock. I had to be in class at 4:30, and I'd run across the other side of the loop area downtown to class. I'd get out at 10 o'clock at night, Monday through Thursday, and then I had some Saturday classes. And I did that. I stayed on the honor roll. I ran into problems when things got tough, but I still stuck it out. There were a couple of times I had to reduce my load to half part-time, and I did. And I ended up being successful enough most of the time to have full loads. But I stayed on the dean's list and the honor roll. I also took part in student government, became the vice president of evening student council. So I was active. I was taking care of my family at the same time. So I ended up finding myself in a situation where I ended up being promoted in the law firm from a messenger to then a file clerk because they saw that I was a go-getter. And then there came an opportunity in the law library. Something happened to the law librarian while I was working in the file department. And they came to me and asked me if I would be interested in that position. And you know my answer. So I got the job and became the law librarian. So this was the first time I had exposure to the books directly, where I used to have to take care of, was custodian of the books. And I used to go to the county law library, which was across the street, and have to take books and check them out for the lawyers and things like that. Anyway, the point of the matter is that I was getting closer. Well, while I was there in that law library, I took it upon myself to teach myself how to research manually. I learned how to actually find cases. So one day I listened to the lawyers and they were talking about a case, a situation they were trying to find what we call precedents, cases to support their position. So what I learned while they went to lunch, I didn't go to lunch. I stayed and I found these cases. I used the Key West system that was in existence, and it's still in existence now, but now it's done by computer. It was done manually. And I used that, and it helped me to find the cases on point that they needed. And I stacked them up, about 10 cases, and put a legal pad on it that says, do not disturb. So anyway, after that, I had sat there and ate a sandwich at my desk. And so lawyers came back from lunch, and one of them, came to me and he says, Richard, I'm looking for these cases. He says, every one of them has a blank space on the shelf. I can't find them, and I need them. They're very important. You need to tell me maybe who checked them out or what. I says, they're not checked out. And I took them over to the table and I showed him, and he opened them up. He said they were opened up to the pages and to the cases that they needed. I said, who did this? I said, I did this. You know how to do that? I said, yeah, I know how to do that, and I know how to write some briefs and memos and things like that as well. He said, come with me, and took me to the senior partner. And he said to me, He told him, he said, we're wasting our money with this kid. We need to get him an assistant because he knows how to do research and he knows how to find stuff. So they hired somebody and turned me into what was then called a law clerk or legal assistant. And today, that is known as a paralegal, and people go to school to learn it. But I taught myself how to do all of that. So in the meantime, I was ready to graduate. By the way, I had left the 2-year institution, didn't get an associate's because I had a plan, a 4-year degree, and I did. I transferred to Roosevelt University and also got involved in government there, several organizations, and I also did radio for the radio station of the college. Anyway, I was doing all of this while I was still, raising a family, and I ended up doing well there, honor roll, dean's list, and then I was chosen by the school when I got ready to graduate to receive an award from the governor of the state of Illinois and enshrined into what's called the Lincoln Academy, where today my name is still enshrined. It's like a hall of fame for students. Well, anyway, I had decided which law school I wanted to go to. I took the LSAT. I didn't do very well, but I was doing the opposite with my work in school under adverse situations and circumstances. So I ended up going ahead and applying to Northwest University School of Law. I was advised that I should apply to more than one school, but I said, nope, I'm going to this one school. And I was so sure. I wasn't cocky or arrogant. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so I applied, and then the school invited me to do something that they hadn't done, to invite me to come because they wanted to see who was behind this thick application. You see, most applications were like this, 5, 6 pages. You write some stuff, maybe a few things. But mine was like, it was like really thick. It was one of them big boxes. And they wanted to see who put this together, and they wanted to see who was behind this. I had told them about my story and what I had grown up with and what I went through and how I persevered. I told them how I took on a family at a early time and all of those different things while I was still in school. And they decided that they would admit me, and I got admitted into the law school. Well, when I got there the first year, ran into some financial problems. It was so bad that I had no income because I couldn't work in the first year. My wife at that time, she was a teacher. They went on strike, so there was no income. The lights went out, and we had no electricity. So guess what? I studied by candlelight. And so the point of the matter is I didn't let anything stop me from going on. Now, I did reach a point where I said I wanted to leave the law school, but there was a teacher there, Professor Joyce Hughes. I told her about it, and she told me to meet her in her office, and I did. And she told me to sit down, and she stood in front of the door with her back to the door and says, quitting is not an option. She says, you're not leaving this room until you tell me you're going to complete. And I will help you. I will guide you. And I told her, okay. I made the deal. And the rest is history. I graduated 3 years later with my law degree. While I was at the law school, one of my classmates, his dad, was a distinguished criminal defense attorney. And this defense attorney was well respected. And he invited me, his son, to come to his house for dinner. And I went to his house for dinner along with a couple other lawyers. Well, they weren't lawyers then, they were law students. And we sat around the table. And so then, we talked about different things that lawyers can do and so forth. So then when they left, it was just him and I and his wife. And he said, I told him about me, about what I had gone through. and I told him I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. He says, I'm going to make a suggestion to you. He says, if you want to learn about the system, the best thing you can do is be a criminal defense lawyer. Now, that sounds kind of, like, huh? But I was a victim. My parents were killed. I want to work in the system to fix that. He said, you can learn how to fix it as a defense lawyer and be good at that. And so I did. I did that. One of the things I did do while I was in law school is in my senior year, we had to pick a project. That was the year that the Criminal Code of 1961 of Illinois was undergoing its first major change. In 1977, House Bill 1500 came about, and I ended up working with one of the several legislators and the General Counsel, and I completed my written assignment, helping to rewrite the law dealing with extended terms, Class X felonies, Habitual Offenders Act, and all those different things. So I did that. So anyway, I went on to after I graduated, went back to the law firm, and I stayed there a couple of years, and then I left and began to start working with people in criminal cases. And I kept doing that for many years, and I was doing real well. I did well with juries because I could communicate real well. I had a photographic memory, which I still do, to be able to share my case and some of the facts that I wanted to bring out. Well, the lawyer became a judge, and he made a suggestion to me. He says, you need to go to the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers seminar out in California, San Diego, in '84. So I did. And I went there, and it turned out that the gentleman that was a lawyer from California that they assigned to our section was a guy who called himself this name. He said his name was John Cochran. Well, of course, 10 years later, you know who that was. He became Johnny Cochran. And then he would come to Chicago, and I had a chance to meet him 2 times for a brief period of time, and before he passed away. But the point of the matter is I learned some things. Well, anyway, after that, I ended up taking a job at a town, a tough town in the south suburbs, and became the village attorney. And then I said, oh, these people are tough out here. This was the crack cocaine capital of the south suburbs. And I decided, I said, I want to carry a gun. He says, you can't unless you're a law enforcement officer. That led me to another career. I went to the academy and became a part-time police officer, working in drug raids and all kinds of things like that. I had bulletproof vests. I had my guns. I had a Glock. I had a .38. I went and was certified by the state to carry a firearm. I was given a badge, and I did that for 4 years. At the same time, I was the village prosecutor, and I dealt with not felony cases, but smaller cases that were local violations. So I was a prosecutor as well. And then I became an internal affairs investigator because there was corruption in the police department. And when the chief was taken down, the new chief came and asked me if I would work with him because he found out he could trust me. Well, long story short on that, I did that. So I did that from '89 to '93. And so in the meantime, going back '91 to '93, I went to seminary, where you see that in my profile, where I had become a minister in '89, and so I pursued a degree in a Master of Arts in Religion, which I never completed because I owe a paper, but it's no big deal. I got what I wanted to get from there. So anyway, I continued on and continued to the point that I retired from being a lawyer in 2000 when I was 50 years old. And I began doing a number of things, running a janitorial company for a company called Service Merchandise here in Illinois. I was responsible for 26 stores and the hiring, and sometimes working with the janitors and helping out getting jobs done. I also then began to do closings for title companies where people refinanced their houses. And I did all of this. Well, and still raising a family, And so anyway, I ended up reaching the point where I taught special education, dealing with behavioral disorder kids, and kids that were ED or educationally disorders that had Down syndrome and other kind of disabilities in terms of learning disabilities. Well, I ended up deciding to go back to school to get an MBA to prove to kids at the church when I was 53. And I got accepted at University of Illinois, Chicago campus after taking a GMAT, which was a test. I hadn't taken a test like that since the bar exam. So at any rate, the point of the matter is I continued moving forward. Well, I was in a car accident, and I didn't finish for the MBA. But anyway, the point of the matter is I continued to learn, continued to teach and share. Eventually, in 2011, someone told me about an opportunity at this school I'd never heard of called Rasmussen College. They were looking for an adjunct or part-time professor to teach business law. So I applied for the position, and I got the job assigned to the Romeoville campus, where I'm assigned to today. And I ended up teaching residentially. And then I went to the dean and told him that I was more of a criminal justice person. I'm capable of teaching any law course. I said, but I prefer this. So they switched me into criminal justice. And I continued as an adjunct from that point on until 2014, when a full-time position opened up for state program coordinator of the School of Justice Studies of Illinois, which meant I'd be responsible for the campuses in Romeoville, Mokena, Aurora, and Rockford. And I got the job, and I continued doing that and began full-time teaching 3 classes, and then had 2 prep periods as my job as program coordinator. And that continued on until 2015, when they changed, actually it was 2016, when they changed the setup and then made me a professor. Well, I was climbing up the ranks, an assistant professor, and then gave me 2 more classes because there was no longer a program coordinator for this. And so I began teaching 5 classes online. And I still continue to this day teaching. And so I became an assistant professor, then an associate professor, and now I'm a full professor, Dr. Richard Wright. But I accomplished all of that under adverse circumstances. And so I came to this school to help students, and I continue to help students, and to let you know that I'm a very empathetic individual, a person who understands that you will run into circumstances, but I'm here as the leader, or as I say, the coach of the team, to take each of you and develop you to become professionals in the areas you desire. But you have to meet me with the desire and ability to want to do so. And if it's something you don't understand and you don't ask, shame on you. And so I've already given you the parameters about my communication. And so I wanted to take the time and share that with you. I won't be mentioning that throughout the quarter. So that's all I have for today. I will be sending out an archive of this, and I will be looking for these words: open house. That's the word I'll be looking for. I'll be looking for, or a phrase. That's it. So if you try to figure out, says okay, and everybody needs to give me that. So I'm going to say good night at this time, and I'll see you guys doing week 3. In the meantime, if you need me, you know what to do. Good night.